What's up, beautiful people? It's Edward McFarland Jr. here with Emcstats sports coverage, and we are officially 1 week into the NBA restart. And the beauty in that is that we know players can stay free of the coronavirus inside the bubble. Of the 340 plus players who are tested consistently every day, no player has tested positive for the virus since the NBA scrimmages have started. And even if a player does test positive, don't panic. I know we're in a pandemic, but don't panic. We will still be able to get in NBA finals because, like I said, if a player does test positive for the coronavirus, the NBA has protocol in place to continue on with the season and keep everyone safe. Another beauty in the NBA's return is that we got an immediate answer on whether or not getting back to hooping would distract players from social activism. When the NBA restart kicked off, we saw teams locking in arms together and taking a knee, and at the tip-off, we were able to see the personal message on the back of players' jerseys, which is a constant reminder of the social and racial injustice against African Americans in this country today. Some of the most selected messages were Black Lives Matter, peace, and equality was the message that was selected the most throughout the league, as the entire Dallas Mavericks team chose to have equality on their back, and the international players had equality spelled out in their native language. Now, as for the most creative message, that goes to Jimmy Butler, who tried to play in the game with no message or his name on the back of his jersey. The NBA didn't allow for him to do that, but Jimmy Butler's message was still heard loud and clear.
I love and respect all the messages that the league did choose. But for me, I felt like with no message, with no name, it's going back to like who I was. And if I wasn't who I was today, I'm no different than anybody else of color. And I want that to be my message in the sense that just because I'm an NBA player, everybody has the same right, no matter what. And that's how I feel about my people of color. Is this is a thing that we will do more action towards. I'm with, like I said, the Black Lives Matter and all the phrases that they chose to put on the back of the jersey. But for me, it's a lot more about action and continuing to learn and teach the people around me, and doing what I can in my community.
Another message that was seen not only in the NBA but also in the WNBA is Say Her Name, which is about keeping on everyone's mind the unlawful killing of Breonna Taylor, who was killed while in her home by local law enforcement in Louisville, Kentucky.
We are dedicating this season to Breonna Taylor, an outstanding EMT who was murdered over 130 days ago in her home. Breonna Taylor was dedicated and committed to uplifting everyone around her. We are also dedicating this season to Say Her Name campaign, a campaign committed to saying the names and fighting for justice for Black women who are so often forgotten in this fight for justice, who do not have people marching in the streets for them. We will say her name. Sandra Bland, Atiana Jefferson, Dominique Remy Fells, and Breonna Taylor. We will be a voice for the voiceless.
With the seeding games finally underway, a game that was perfectly scheduled for prime time was the Lakers versus the Clippers, as everyone thinks that's just the preview of what's to come for the possible Western Conference Finals. Now, this game did not disappoint in any way as it went down to the wire. Starting off with the second half, Paul George came out repping Sniper Game as he caught fire from three to start the quarter. He shot 54% from deep, and this was his third straight three to open up the quarter. And Kawhi is like, hey, it ain't no fun unless the homies can have some. Late in the third, Anthony Davis started doing damage from the perimeter. He scored a game high of 34 points, and his momentum set the Lakers up for an 11-point lead in the fourth. But with less than 30 seconds left, Paul George would hit his sixth three to give him 30 points and tie the game at 101 apiece. Now, with the game on the line, you know LeBron is going to make a play as he gets his own rebound and puts the Lakers up by 2. But if you really know LeBron, you know he's always going to make a clutch defensive play. LeBron starts this possession off guarding Kawhi. Wait for it. Then LeBron switches over to Paul George, putting pressure on him and harassing him just enough for Paul George to miss the shot. and you might have missed what happened on that play. So take a closer look. Watch how LeBron checks the clock on the other end while still guarding Paul George to see how much time is left in that pressure situation. Just beautiful all-around defense and awareness from the king. LeBron finished with 16 points and 11 boards, and for the Lakers, they clinched the 1 seed after starting off their seeding games 2-2. As for the Clippers, make a note that Lou Will and Montrezl Harrell did not play. The Trailblazers versus the Grizzlies was another close game, as you had Portland trying to inch closer to the 8th seed where the Grizzlies sit. In the 4th, Memphis looked like they had the game under control, but the lie detector determined that was a lie, as they left Hoodie Melo open late in the game for back-to-back threes. The game would go into overtime, and instead of it just being Dame time for Portland, it was everybody's time. The Blazers finished the game with 5 players in double figures for scoring, and McCollum had the most with 33 points. Blazers get the dub 140 to 135. And as of Wednesday, Portland is 2-1 in their seeding games as they lost to the Celtics and won against the Rockets. And for Memphis, they have yet to win a seeding game as they are 0-4. Keeping the highlights going, the hottest team in the West is the Phoenix Suns. They're undefeated at 3-0, beating the Wizards, Dallas, and the Clippers. And this game won over Paul George and Kawhi just deserves a Rick Ross hump. Devin Booker is averaging 30, and the Suns are at the 12th seed with the realistic hope to compete for a playoff spot with their seeding games. Coming up on their schedule for Thursday is the Pacers, who's the other team to start off 3-0. And a big reason for that is because of TJ Warren, who opened the seeding games with a 50 piece against the 76ers. He was the 4th Pacer in history to drop at least 50, and he's been the Pacers' leading scorer for all 3 games so far, averaging close to 40. The Pacers are currently at the 5th seed with a guaranteed playoff spot in the East. All of the efforts and gestures being made in the NBA to create nonstop awareness for racial injustice against African Americans in this country is great. But be clear, the players and coaches are not just fighting injustice with hashtags and words being printed across their jerseys. They are taking action. For example, you have the NBA Coaches Association, who has partnered with the Equal Justice Initiative, as the NBA head coaches have made a promise to educate their communities on racial injustice against African Americans, on not just what's been happening in the present time, but also what happened back in the day. And on the financial level, you have players like Dwight Howard, Drew Holiday, and Patty Mills, who have said that they will take the remainder of their salaries for this season and put that towards racial and social injustice initiatives, and combine their salaries for the remainder of the season come out to around $7 million. On a voting level, you have players like LeBron James, who have partnered with other athletes and entertainers to create the More Than a Vote organization. And this organization is about educating blacks on voting and helping them get registered to vote. And this is all being done to fight against voter suppression. And because of the More Than a Vote organization, the Atlanta Hawks had the State Farm Arena be used for early elections, and it will be used for upcoming elections. And the Milwaukee Bucks and Detroit Pistons said they will be willing to do the same thing for their arena and training facility. As for the WNBA, Maya Moore made the greatest sacrifice when she set out her 2019 WNBA season to help Jonathan Irons, a black man who spent 23 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. With the help of Maya, on July 1st of this year, Jonathan Irons was released from prison. But even with him being out, Maya Moore is still not playing this season, as she's committed to working towards criminal justice reform. Other WNBA players have followed in her footsteps in sitting out this season, and as a sign of the ultimate teamwork, Kyrie Irving will be donating $1.5 million to cover the salaries of WNBA players who want to work towards injustice or who want to sit out this season due to health-related concerns, especially dealing with COVID. And that's not even half of the work players and coaches in the WNBA and NBA are doing. Everything I just named is just the beginning. So if you don't know anything else, know this: even when the ball stops bouncing, players and coaches work towards racial and social injustice will continue. I'm Edward McFarland Jr., and this is Emcstats Sports Coverage.